Well, thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Just before we bring in our panel of guests for our conversation on the review of Ondo governorship election, let's take this background report by Ibrahim Bello Gunda.
Ondo State, known as the Sunshine State, witnessed the contest for number one seat in the state across its 3,933 polling units, 203 wards and 18 local government areas, with a total of 2,053,061 registered voters out of its 5,316,603 population. The election was a battle between the incumbent All Progressive Congress Governor Lucky Aiyedatiwa against 17 other candidates, including a former Deputy Governor Agbola Ajayi of the People's Democratic Party. 18 political parties contested in the polls with promise to better the living condition of the people, among others. The much-anticipated Ondo State governorship election took off last Saturday, November 16th, which was described as peaceful in most parts of the state. Observers say the process witnessed low turnout of voters compared to previous exercise, with negligible reports of electoral infringement. However, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) was able to distribute electoral materials and ensure smooth process in most parts of Ondo State. After computation of results from the 18 local government areas, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) declared Lucky Aiyedatiwa of the All Progressive Congress as the winner of the Ondo State governorship election. Aiyedatiwa defeated his closest rival, Agbola Ajayi of the People's Democratic Party, having secured 366,781 votes against Ajayi's 117,845 votes. The APC also clinched victory in all 18 local government areas of the state. Labour Party and Zenith Labour Party polled 1,162 and 2,692 votes, respectively, with others trailing behind. The results were announced by the coalition officer, Professor Olayemi Akinwumi, at INEC State Headquarters in Akure. While reacting to the governorship election in Ondo State, the leadership of the People's Democratic Party said the election runs short of all expectations of a free, fair and credible election, citing widespread election monetization and vote buying. But the question is, after the election, what next? What should Ondo State residents expect in the coming days? How should the other opponents behave in the spirit of sportsmanship while ensuring it is all about the good of the state and its people? These and more will be the focus of Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Ibrahim Bello Gunda, for the background report. And joining us now in the studio for a review of the Ondo governorship election is Faith Nwadishi, Executive Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a while.
Thank you.
And also here in the studio is Nick Dazang, former Director of Voter Education and Publicity, INEC. Welcome.
Thank you.
We've had you over the weekend and you're still here.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, always.
Yes, as always.
All right. Also joining us here in the studio, we have Hamzat Lawal, is the Chief Executive Officer, Connected Development. Hamzat, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria once again.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
All right. So let's kickstart our conversation this morning by reviewing that the last Saturday governorship election. Let's start with Madam here, Faith. You were there all through last week, I guess. I mean, you were on ground, you saw what happened. And from your assessment, what would you say are the key factors that influence Saturday's governorship election in the outcome of the election on the governorship election in Ondo State?
Okay, thank you, and thank you again for having me. The Ondo election, if I want to assess the key factors, I would assess it by the participation of the different stakeholders. So let me start first with INEC. I think INEC learned a lot from what happened in Edo and made a commitment to work on that. For instance, the logistics. The logistics was near perfect, but not perfect. It cannot be perfect. I remember on Thursday when we were at the Central Bank, the lead of the logistics team, they have a technical logistics team, and the lady was just reading the riot act to all the members of that team. If I don't see you here, I'm going to blacklist you. If I don't see, So I was very excited. I saw that happening. I saw that commitment, you know, the power that she had, and she was really being assertive. I think that really helped, that helped a lot. And then the fact that also materials arrived on time. I was in Ondo on Monday,
Okay.
and that was the day that they brought the sensitive materials to the airport. Usually it will come in on Tuesday, like they came a day earlier. So on Wednesday, we went to do an inspection in the CBN strong room of those materials. Already the materials were bashed in the local government areas, the number, you see even the serial numbers and everything there. And on Thursday was the distribution. I went from there to the local government, to the racks, you know, just to ensure. And we saw that things were moving very well. Then on election day, surprisingly, by 7:30, 7:45, I had visited like 3 to 4 polling units, and they were already set up. They were already set up, waiting for the people to come. Some had security agents there, some had, there was one particular place, I saw a woman that came out as early as 7:30, and she said she came with her daughter and she was going to vote. She was waiting patiently. So that's on the side of INEC. But it wasn't all rosy. There were some rack centers that we went to. They were not properly set up. You know, they had those kind of issues, which I think we should look at going forward. I know that, for instance, those rack centers are supposed to have been prepared by the other stakeholders. Let's say you're using a primary school or a secondary school that is a public school. You expect that everything will be in order. You will have, if it's a hostel, the hostel will be good. You have light, you have water. But we saw that some of these things were not available. And this is what we keep saying, that when it comes to election, INEC becomes the water tanker, you know, the electricity provider and all of that. Those things needs to be checked. Then on the political side, I will say again that the politicians have continuously been the weakest link in all of this. Now, for all of these inspections that we went to, 18 parties are fielding candidates, but you don't see more than 3-4 party agents coming to those meetings. Imagine going to inspect sensitive materials, and you had just about 6 or 7 political parties agents who were there, and then you go to the polling units. We had just 2 political parties, you know, agents there on that day, and then you see political parties carry money around, you know, wanting to sell votes. In one of the polling units that I was at, St. Stephen's Anglican Primary School, the DSS has arrested a party agent that had money and machete in his car, and vote buying was just on there. So on the side of citizens, I want to say that perhaps we need to begin to pay more attention to citizens, and the same kind of attention we should be giving to the politicians, we should give to citizens. Because before the election, I had the privilege of even going to the markets and along asking people what, and they said no, they are going to sell their votes. I had this, you know, this saying long time ago in Ekiti, and I had it again in Ondo, Diboko Sobe, that's vote and make a pot of soup. And people were saying, yes, they're going to make a pot of soup. Yesterday I saw 1 or 2 persons I had interviewed, and I was saying, okay, you have voted, you have gotten the money. I hope the money will last. The pot of soup you are going to make will last for the next 4 years. So vote buying was there because citizens were willing to sell their votes. And then again, on the aspect of citizens, we keep talking about the role of young persons. So you go to the polling unit where people are voting, you're seeing not younger people, but young people, young adults. You're not seeing those between the ages of 18 to 30. You're not seeing them in their numbers, but you're seeing in the numbers those between 30 to even 90 years old. I had the opportunity in one polling unit to interview a woman in her 80s, her early 80s. The other one was her mid 80s, and the other one was about 93 years old. And she was a person with disability in one particular polling unit. But the sad thing was that among these 3 women that I interviewed, one of them, after speaking with them, was asking me, where is her money? Why wouldn't I give her her money? So people came there, and the INEC officials, now that's one part I didn't say, were very professional. Luckily, we saw that those who were trained were the ones deployed, unlike in the past when you keep complaining that the people who were not trained were the ones that are doing that. But you saw, because they had gone through that training, they were very professional in handling the equipment that they were given. And then the beavers performed wonderfully. I sat down again like I did in Edo to time to time the time between the accreditation of the beavers to when the person would vote. Apart from the very first two persons, you know, because of that initial, they're being jiltry, because of the population and all of that, the first two persons took about 3 minutes, but after then it was taking up between 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes to do that, and the beavers was accrediting in less than 30 seconds.
Wow, that's fast.
The beavers, yes, was accrediting in less than 30 seconds.
We'll get deeper
So what about the security agencies?
Yes, okay, so I was going to come to that. The security agents did very well. On Tuesday, we had a stakeholders meeting. The chief of Navy staff actually sent his representative to that meeting, and they gave an update of what they were going to do. But we had a little bit of challenge because the Inspector General, there were 3 different figures that were branded by the police that they were going to deploy. There was this 22,000, then after 35,000, and then the early morning on Saturday or Friday, on your program, I saw also the police representative talking about over 36,000.
Yeah.
So we weren't sure of the actual number from 22 to 35 and then to over 36,000. They said they were going to have at least 4 policemen on the polling unit. However, what we found were there were 4 security officers in each polling unit, but not 4 police officers. Okay. So when you go to the polling unit, you're seeing 1 police officer, 1 immigration, road safety, depending on who is there. Okay. Even the correctional service, they were there. But they were just there. And there was one particular polling unit we went to, and we saw a nursing mother, security agent nursing mother. And I asked her, how old is your son? And he's 4 months. And she's on duty, and I'm wondering, why would you deploy a nursing mother out here? That's another. I've never seen that. This is the first time I'm seeing that. So apart from all of this, I think the security agents overall did very well. But the whole issue of vote buying, and one of our expert team members in the polling unit, was at a police officer actually approached him asking for money. He thought he was a party agent. So when he introduced himself and said, no, I'm not a party agent, I am an observer, he left him and went to the next party agent and said, where is our share of the money?
Okay, we'll get to talk more about that as the program progresses. Let's bring in Nick Dazang into the conversation. It seems like INEC is beginning to regain its credibility in the electoral process with the Ondo election. But one issue that has burdened Nigerians when it comes to election is the menace of vote buying, and people say it's a threat to the Nigerian democracy that has continued to be a source of concern. You'll be in the studio over the weekend, though you were not on ground in Ondo, and you'll be listening to reporters bringing in their reports from all corners of Ondo. So let's have your own assessments of how it went down.
Yes, I think what happened in Ondo is a significant improvement on Edo in terms of early opening of polls, in terms of logistics, which also informed the early opening of polls, the professional conduct of both INEC staff, security agencies, the robust support of the security agencies, particularly in the riverine areas. Perhaps for the first time since 2016, we've not had any mishap in the riverine areas, and that speaks to the kind of robust support that the Marine Police and the Navy would have given. And we also saw the seamless performance of the Beavers and the IRF. This is the way to go. And I think by this election, INEC has embarked on its journey of earning trust with stakeholders. And I think INEC too needs to see that its performance should not be oscillating between stellar performance and mediocre performance. It must be on that path, that trajectory of excellence. And I say this because they need to ensure that Nigerians don't see what happened in Ondo as a fluke, as a flash in the pan, as something that just happened by mistake. It needs to be sustained, and the sustenance is important for continuing to earn trust and for also the conduct of subsequent elections, because Anambra is the next off-cycle governorship election, And Anambra is more challenging. It has always been more challenging than Edo and Ondo and Osun and Ekiti put together. In the sense that, number one, since the past 3 or 4 election cycles, no voter turnout in Anambra has crossed the 20% threshold.
Why is that?
So, and it has to do with a lot of factors. Okay. One of which is that over time, we have seen heightened insecurity, particularly in 2020, when the federal government had to intervene to ensure that elections took place in Anambra, and where at the last minute a lot of ad hoc staff pulled out of the election. And when that happens, there are consequences for the fidelity, for the transparency of the election, because you would have trained people, like she has observed, and then the person you have trained has withdrawn with the knowledge that you have conferred on him, that you've invested in him. And now you are recruiting someone who has not been trained. He's not proficient in using the beavers or the IRF. He does not know the processes, you know. And even now, as we speak, there are issues. For example, the Electoral Act says the superior presiding officer, the supervising presiding officer, the SPO, at each polling unit has the right to direct the security agencies to remove anyone who is conducting himself against the laws and conventions of voting on election day. Okay. For example, if vote buying is taking place in a polling unit, the presiding officer is by law expected to direct the security agency to effect the arrest of the person perpetrating that. But it seems to me that most of the ad hoc staff don't even know that they have that power, because someone has not done his job of telling them that, look, when this happens, this is what you ought to do.
So what happens during the training? Are they not told?
So that's what I'm saying, that yes, this needs to be captured in view of what is happening. We have seen over time, I think in not less than 15 years now, the rampant deployment of money to buy and sell votes. Politicians weaponize poverty, and they take advantage of this poverty to buy the votes of vulnerable Nigerians. And also the system is such that the returns on investment of any business in Nigeria is highest at the political level. So we need to make political office unattractive. We need to make political office service-driven. It shouldn't be a place where people just go to ingratiate themselves, to luxuriate in the office. People should deliver good governance. And at the same time, we need to work on the citizens. We need to do more voter education, not just the normal voter education. We need to tweak and to tweak our messages in such a fashion that people will realize the folly of collecting money in order to sell their votes. Okay, you've taken money to make a pot of soup. How long will that pot of soup last? Will that pot of soup provide a road for you? Will it provide a hospital for you? Will it build a school where your child or what will attend? You know, so this on balance, when you now bring up this to the fore of electoral discussion, you let people know that, look, this is what you are doing. You are shortchanging yourself by so doing. And in addition, you know, you have given up your right to hold the person who is representing you to account. And also, he's not obligated to deliver good governance. I recall an incident in one of the Northwest states where a senator, after he had been elected, hardly even went to his constituency. And then when some of his constituents in Abuja confronted him, he said, but I settled you guys a long time ago. So anytime I want to come back, I will come and consult you and settle you again. But for now, leave me alone. So you can see the temerity.
A sad situation we find ourselves.
And the sad situation in which we find ourselves, because you have already mortgaged yourself. You've sold your birthright for a pot of or a plate of porridge,
including that of your children.
And in fact, you have mortgaged the future of generations, not just yourself. So this, we need to make people understand this, that if you take this money after the pot of soup, Otiton is finished.
What happens after?
What happens? So
right.
we need the voter education also needs to reflect the coloration of the dimension of the bad things that are happening in the field. Not just, you don't just go and say, stop this. Let people understand why they should stop it.
Stop it.
You know, we need to be more imaginative. We need to be more proactive. We need to appeal to people's sense of patriotism. And the only way you can do it is to make them understand that when you do this, you are the loser, you know, for it. And the other man does not have any obligation towards you anymore.
Thank you very much, Nick, for that, your contribution there. We need to tell people that you can take the decision, but what is the consequences of your decision? That is the most important thing.
Yes.
You have raised a lot of issues, the issue of voters' education, the issue of sustainability of the INEC performance this election. Let's come to Amza. I mean, before the election, there was so many permutation, prediction, and all that. Many people actually expected that Ondo election would be better than that of Edo State because of the foreseeing the stress or the tension in Edo and all that. Would you say the outcome actually aligned, you know, with the prediction of the election and everything like that? Would you say the outcome of the election aligned with what was predicted?
Oh yes, it did align with some of the prediction. We know that Edo was heated, the polity was heated because of the players, but that of Ondo was not heated. In short, we saw that the politicians in Ondo probably learned from Edo. We didn't see a lot of fake news, misinformation and disinformation. We didn't see a lot of threat or hate speeches by this political class. So it was commending and encouraging that both the ruling and opposition party were not at loggerhead. And we saw that even during the peace accord, no one opted out that they would not sign onto the peace accord. And they actually attended most of the civil society gathering.
Okay.
They shared their manifestos, shared their ideas. There were lots of debate and engagement in Ondo State. And I think, you know, it did actually exceed expectation. And even post-election, we've not seen any post-election agitation or violence that usually erupts, you know, after results have been announced and winners declared. Yes, we know that some political parties and politicians would always reject the results, which has been the trend. We've not seen statesmanship where people would accept or congratulate whoever emerges winners. But I also think it's encouraging because when you look at the processes, both from security side, from INEC side, it's really encouraging. Again, as much as we want to talk about some of the expectations and how citizens or the electorate play their own role, I would try not to blame them. Not that I'm trying to make excuse for them, but I think that it's a time for us to reflect, you know, as we engage in electoral processes. There's an economic factor here, and we are all living in Nigeria. Even if we as civil society will continue to educate and inform citizens that don't sell your vote, you know, your vote is your future. The vote is something that has allowed everybody to be equal, because even all the candidates, they're only entitled to one vote. But I think that it has all started with the money politics. And you see, yeah, I agree with my sister, Faith. But I think we need to focus on the politicians. You see, if you look at every election cycle, everybody is ready, but the politicians are never ready. The only thing they are ready about is money. And it starts from internal party democracy. How they self-party nomination and expression of interest form. How they deal with the primaries, either direct or indirect primaries. How they deal with consultation. And how they believe that they need to amass so much money or go and get money bags or political sponsors and bring money on election day. Let's go back to even the off-cycle election of Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo. Money played a lot in Bayelsa. That it started from 5,000 and went as high as 15 to 20,000. So it was about the highest bidder. And it's so sad that even post-election, there was no review. what we had expected is civil society and security will come and say, how can we curb these banners? I give it to DSS because their sting operation, we've seen that it's yielding results. I'm not sure why EFCC would do an operation and you would bring your badges and you bring your banners or your jackets writing here. If you see people buying or selling vote and they see EFCC from a distance, they would run. But nobody saw DSS coming because it was a sting on the ground. They caught the guy red-handed, so they were evident. Okay. And you know, there was civil society observers, even had media. It was carried live because I was watching it live when they did the sting operation and recovered Ghana Must Go full of cash. I think we need to focus on these politicians and look at how economically it is impacting our election, because you cannot separate election from economics. It is what is obtainable from the economic reality that we would see in the after or during and the aftermath of election. Now, people did not come out to vote. So if you look at how is this, who is this economy impacting more? Are the young people. Yes. So to them, why would they engage? Why would they come out when they are not seeing direct or indirect benefit? What they are seeing is civil society and media continue to give them hope. Where is the hope? Why is it not happening now? So again, I think we need to come up with this accountability framework that, you know, we can hold people to account, but interrogate and engage the internal party democracy. Because if we don't get it right, you see, even my sister, when we talk about gender equality or equity, it starts from the political party. If we don't get it right from political party, this will transcend to election day, and we'll continue to see money bags. Maybe we need to embrace the digital economy or cashless economy. That, you know, and maybe somehow, we need to work with all these anti-corruption agencies to try tracking who's withdrawing this cash, and maybe with the, I'm sure we can work with the CBN and bankers to see how these monies are moving and target the serial number. So whoever is coming to pay back this money, how did you get this money? And then interrogate and investigate and hold these people to account. Why? It is criminal to bring money on election day to buy vote. It is criminal. The law frowns against it. And I think the law enforcement agents, particularly the police, must rise up to the occasion. You see, I say police because either you say DSS, you say EFCC, ICPC, all of them. The police have more powers because they are the apex law enforcement agency. The police does not even need a petition to investigate or summon anybody. They have those powers as prescribed by law. And they must rise to the occasion. But it is really sad and disheartening. Because if we continue like this, maybe we'll go to Anambra. And then, because you see, like you said, Anambra is, the dynamics in Anambra is complicated.
Yes.
And if we don't nip this by the ball, then what happens even when we go to 2027 general elections? Which
is just around the corner with time. How time flies these days. Before you know, it's 2027. Madam Faith, he talked about the youths, you know, not willing to participate in the electoral process. But some school of thought also say they must participate to bring change.
Exactly. Everybody needs to participate to bring about change, because you cannot stay outside of the circle and make a very valid contribution. Democracy, as we say, is listening to the voice of the majority. And right now, we look at it, when we describe Nigeria's population, we describe Nigeria's population as a young population, because we have that youth bulge there. So imagine that you have that youth bulge and that percentage of individuals are not actively participating in this process. It means that we have a huge problem. So you have over 2 million people registered, and somebody is declared with 300 and something votes, 300 something thousand votes. We should sit down and reflect. We should sit down and assess that. So now we see that the politicians are using money to buy votes. If you come out as a young person, you come out to vote, you're not collecting money, your vote begins to count, because the whole idea is, they say, our votes don't count. That's why young people don't come out. Imagine a situation whereby 10% of the youth population in that state came out to vote. Perhaps today we would have been speaking a different language. But when you stay out, you stay out and you are enabling what is happening. Because if you don't come out to vote, it shows that you have voted also.
You're an enabler.
Exactly. You know, better you vote. When you come out to vote, it's better that your number is captured. Because when you don't come out to vote, you have allowed the person whose vote you were protesting against, you didn't want to come out to vote, you're actually giving the person the vote. Because declaration of vote is just by simple majority. So it's important that we have that. But I think that the challenge we have, or the gap, is this. In our schools, we teach civic education now. But civic education is taught up to SS3, where children are just maybe 15, 16. And that period from 16 to 18, there's no education. We don't have a conscious way of capturing them and keeping them, you know, with information that will lead to that transition. So you have somebody who is 18, he's not looking forward to going to get a ballot paper. Unless something happens, there's a particular program, and the person is 19, is trying to that. Just imagine where we have a program as you are getting out of secondary school. There's a conscious program, either by the National Rotation Agency or anybody, so that on your 18th birthday, celebrating your 18th birthday, one of the things you go to do is get registered, get your voter's card, and you keep that pressure or that information on. It will give people the encouragement to want to come out to vote. So all of these things we're talking about that, and I agree with what Hamza said about the AFCC and the way the security agents do that. So when you speak with it, and really I must commend the Navy, because I just said we had a meeting with them on Tuesday, and the Chief of Naval Staff actually sent a representative to that meeting, and they told us what they were going to do, and that's exactly what they did. And I'm sure that's what also led to the success that we had for the first time in the riverine areas in Ondo State. So you have that situation. In that same polling unit where you saw the DSS, you know, arresting that person, the EFCC came there. But for me, I felt it was more like a show than an action. Because you are coming there with all of the branding and people are seeing you. The people who were actually selling the vote were right in front of the EFCC people. And they even had banter with the person. You know, and they left. They didn't even stay up to 5 minutes. They didn't even stay up to 5 minutes. So now the vote selling and buying has become a trend in our elections. What I expect is this. The FCC, to do a proper job, don't go with all of those brands. Ensure they had about over 200 wards in that place. Why don't you send at least one officer that is not wearing uniform, you mingle with the people, you just stay there and observe what is happening. Observe, because definitely you will see them. You don't even have to be a security agent to see these things happening. They start discreetly, but as time goes on, when they see that nobody is...
they come to the open.
Yes, they just come to the open. And it wasn't about one political... it was actually to the highest bidder. There was a place where one political party was selling 5,000, and then the people who collected 5,000 heard that other people were selling 10,000. They moved over. So it was to the highest bidder. In Edo, we saw somebody, a party agent, stand up during election and say, if you vote for my political party, we'll pay you 20,000. And he was not arrested. The police is there. And that's why I come to the point about having the SP or the presiding officer being the one to say, take this person out. The police and the security agents, they are there. They know what is happening. Do they have to wait for the SPO to say?
Most of these security agents say, even if we arrest them, when they are taken to the police, they are released.
Yes, so
do they see the point in making the arrest?
No, but at least make the arrest. Let people know you have made the arrest and take it to a conclusive end. One of the problems with all of these arrests is that some of these people who make this arrest are not residents there. They are not residents there. So they come from other places, and then when you make an arrest, you have to hand over to an IPO that is in that place. So perhaps if you are the IPO and you leave after election, maybe the highest you can stay is still till Monday. And then you leave after the election. Who follows up that case? And because, again, now let's take for instance, this person that was arrested with cash in his vehicle, he's not the owner of that cash. Somebody gave him. You are going to leave the person who gave him that money and prosecute him. So, just like Hamza said, you can actually trace the source of that money and get the person in charge. And what we have advised is, you get this person. You have political leaders in that particular area. Maybe they are the ward leaders, they are the local government chairpersons of that political party. They also should be held liable. Because if they didn't make that money available, it wouldn't go. Do you know that there was a particular polling unit we went to as NEC officials were setting up? We had somebody making a call and telling the person, that money you were giving, you have to bring it here. If you don't bring it here, you won't sleep in your house today. I'm telling you, this happened live. So people are calling, that money, you are supposed to have been here. Make sure you bring that money. If you don't bring that money, you will not sleep in your house today. So is it not somebody who gave somebody that money to bring to the food? Then we get the person there, and at the end of the day, the person is released because we have not captured the real people in the entire mix. And Hamza mentioned issue of inclusion and...
so we have to cut the head of the snake.
No, you just definitely, because if you don't cut the head of the snake, it will grow back.
Besides the money factor, what other factors actually influence the turnout of the election?
So, like for instance, interestingly, the woman I interviewed that's 93 years, I'm sure she's even more than 93 because she was really old. Unfortunately, the beavers didn't capture her, but she was not disturbed about the fact that the beavers, people testified that when she came for the 2023 election, they captured her immediately, but they didn't capture her. I asked her what has been her interest in doing. She said, number one, she cannot stay at home where election is happening and she will not come out to vote. She was being practically carried. You know, and then number two, she has been hoping for a better Nigeria. She cannot say that it's not improving, it's improving. If she dies, she wants to die a happy person that she has contributed to that. And I was wowed. And I was imagining that, imagine young people have this kind of mentality. That when you come out to vote, you're actually contributing to seeing a better Nigeria, a better governance, where you can hold people accountable. But when you stay out, you enable them to continue to do what they were doing. So number one is the mentality of people that they have. Oh, votes are not counting. But I keep asking people, if votes are not counting, why is it that politicians are paying more money for our votes? Why? Because you don't want to put money where your return on investment is zero. We just established the fact now that political office is where you have one of the highest return on investment. So if you don't do all of those things to get elected. Now, before the election, campaign was not, you have these razzmatazz especially in the Southwest. It was calm. The citizens were even concerned that they have not seen where they will give them T-shirts and all of that. It was not happening. I said, don't worry, they will bring out the money on election day.
And they did.
And that was what happened. So increasingly, aside from the mega campaigns, maybe the campaign they go to the local government headquarters, we're no longer seeing those that you see drums on the street every time, 247 until they say campaigns are no longer there. It's not there. And people will say, no, there's hunger in the land, though. I said, you see this thing here? I said, it's money they used to do those. Don't worry, they are keeping the money. And there's another thing. We have also found that the connivance of community people, especially community leadership.
Okay.
So you go to a community and they say, if you're not going to vote for this so person, don't come out to vote. That's happening.
You'll be threatened.
Yes. If you know you are not going to vote for so person, don't come out to vote. So you are imagining somebody has come out, spent money, putting electoral processes together, gotten people, and then on the day of election, the person is getting 0 votes.
Because of the threat.
Because of the threat. So people don't come out, and that's another thing. I think the security agents need to be able to do that. I think it was in either Oshun, when we had a meeting with the DSS and all of that, and that was when the trend started coming. And we started seeing that that's happening. So the connivance of the community leaders, and even religious leaders now, if the religious leader said, this is our candidate, they will tell you. So you just know, our guy at the top has said, this is where we should go. There's no need. If you don't believe it, you can just say something happened, though. That's why you didn't come out, because you don't want to offend anybody. That's happening. The issue of intimidation is also there. Now, one thing that happened in this Ondo election, and I see from most of the polling units, citizens themselves, after voting, they deliberately show their ballot paper. The polling unit I spent most of the time, the INEC official there, she almost lost her voice. She had to now threaten that if we see you show your paper, there were security agents there. Do you understand what I'm saying? There were security agents there. If we see you show your paper again, we're going to declare your vote null and void. You will know, in fact, we will bring it out from this box and we do that. But immediately after she said that, the next person that voted did the same thing. And security agents didn't do anything.
So, Mr. Nick, what is the point of having 30-something thousand security agents, you know, during election? What is the point of having these people there? If this, what Faith just outlined now can still happen, what is the point?
Well, I think deployments are informed by the total number of polling units and collation centers. And in this election, for example, we had a total number of 4,154 centers plus polling units. We had 3,933 polling units. And also don't forget that Ondo is peculiar in the sense that apart from having the longest coastline in Nigeria, it borders about 5 to 6 states. It borders Kogi State, Osun State, Ogun State, Edo State, Delta State. And you need also to secure the inland waterways. It's not enough for you to escort the ANEC officials to their polling units and escort them back. You must also secure the maritime environment. That is, you must also have gunboats, because on those days, hoodlums come out also to hijack ANEC officials, as we saw in 2016, where ANEC officials were coming back from Isedo from Ilaje to Akure, and on their way they were hijacked. Ballot boxes were stuffed by those hoodlums, and they were compelled to take them back. You know, so you need sometimes that kind of deployment in order to meet these exigencies. And also don't forget, and I've said this before, that in the general election, the challenges are such that they are thinly spread. They are thinly spread, and most of these people who constitute campaign councils, membership of campaign councils, like this, our governors, excellencies, each one will be concerned with his own turf, with his own area. But where you have off-cycle governorship elections, you will see 10 to 20 governors converging in a state with their followers and with other things, you know.
What are the other things?
that are likely to be deployed to influence the conduct of the election in favor of their candidate. So, you know, the concerns are many, because all those things that are likely to conspire against the election they increase in number. Whereas in a general election, you could see that the security people are thinly spread, everybody is thinly spread, because you are dealing with over 100 and something polling units and collation centers, and you need to deploy to have at least some presence, security presence in this area. So these are the considerations.
Okay.
And I think for some time, and I think this can be supported empirically, since we started conducting off-cycle elections, there has been a correlation between confidence in the process and the presence of security agencies. Once people see the police, the security agencies ahead of the election, and they even do what they call show of force, it sends a message to miscreants that for this period you cannot, operate. I know in time past, even before off-cycle elections became the norm, based on court orders, that in some areas where there were miscreants, what the security agents used to do was that, for example, in Metama, if they knew of a gang of miscreants, on a Friday or Thursday before the conduct of the election, they invite their gang leader to the police station. And once the guy does not return, it will send a message to his followers that they have to behave themselves. But now it has, things continue to change. And the security agencies too continue to change their modus operandi.
Okay.
And but we hope that in future, as you know, elections become routine, and as each stakeholder performs his own role, because we are saying now that we need to work on the political class.
Okay,
We
thank you very
began
much.
with INEC.
Because of time,
We began with INEC, and INEC consistently kept reforming itself. And it, you know, the media and civil society kept keeping INEC on its toes. And it's still being done. And you can see that INEC tries to respond to these scrutinies. We need to visit similar vigorous and rigorous scrutiny on the political class.
okay, thank you very much, Nick, for that. We need to visit the political class, and that brings me to the next question. Although I wanted you to speak to the demographic trend at the last election,
Time
but
is
you
not-
will.
yes,
But let me ask Hamza this question. Nick said something about, you see different, governors and state actors, leaving their domain to go to where the elections, is taking place. That brings me to the question of party politics and alliances, the impact on off-cycle election. How do we begin to manage that?
Interesting. It's here to stay. Off-cycle election is here to stay. I know President Jonathan was advocating that we need to find a way to have elections at the same time, but it's practically impossible. Or is it that we want to cut short on people's tenure to then make them run during the general elections? But I think maybe is to have a clear guideline on how they can engage. Again, you cannot say that, because again the Constitution allows for freedom of movement and association. So where is the place of the Constitution? Where is the place of the guideline? Where is the place of morality? Because if you look at morality and what is right, then people are not supposed to interfere with a process that is supposed to be free, fair, and credible. Because if you interfere, what you do is you remove transparency and accountability out of it and take away, the faith that people should have in the entire value chain. So I think it's to have leaders that have morals, run the affairs of state. It's okay to want to show alliance. It's okay to want to support. Yes, go for campaign rallies. But I think 2 days before election, everybody should pull out. This is the indigents. This is something that has to do with the indigent. If you're not an indigent, what are you doing in the state? Even we as observers, we don't interfere. We only observe and report. Media only covers. Security agencies provide security of life and property. So why are you there? And, our elder statesman talked about other things. We know the other things. Some of them they're taking, all these so-called touts and talks that they've given substances to take so that they misbehave. Because most time, when you even look at electoral violence or offenses, it's not the indigents that commit those offenses. I've seen during election where they import and export people, criminal elements. You see them gangs, and I don't know.
And they come in days to the election.
Yes, they even stay in hotels where some of us are
acclimatize
staying.
with
You go for
yes.
breakfast, you know that this is a criminal, obviously because of how they look and how they are behaving, even how they are interacting with their so-called gang members, and you wonder, how did they, together with you, come to this state? They are also there for their own mission, as you are for your own, law-abiding mission. So I think that, maybe INEC has to lead this front, this campaign, and talk to these governors and say, yes, it's okay to come to the state to support your party and their candidates, but you have to excuse us to do our work. And maybe have security agents also call them.
But like you said, most politicians are not ready, even to the D-Day.
Again, that's the place of morality. And this is a wake-up call to citizens. And I agree with Faith. If you don't engage, don't complain. No. Because if you don't engage, why are you complaining? You're complaining that things are going bad. But for you to fix them to be right, you're saying you would not engage, you will not vote, you will not get registered to vote. It's none of your business. If it's none of your business, then allow the people who have taken this process as a business to mind the business. Because obviously it's now becoming a business for some people, because we're not supposed to have transaction of vote buying and vote selling. It's only in business transaction you do this. So I think that if we have, so you have over 2 million people that are registered to vote. if you count the person who won, the runner-up, and the two other
Close.
Not up to 1
it's
million.
not up to 500,000. So it means that about 25% decided the outcome of this election. Not even up to 50%. So I think whatever happens in the next 4 years in Ondo State, people should not complain. Okay. And I think we need to start telling people the truth, because as civil society, we want to give hope. No, if things are going bad, then it is the consequence of your actions.
Okay, all right, thank you. Madam, now from the outcomes of this Ondo election, what lesson can be, gotten from it for the subsequent off-cycle election, like the one we are going to have in Anambra? What lesson can be learned?
The first lesson is that when citizens don't engage the process, anything can come out. And as citizens, increasingly we have seen that they are the most important in this value that we are looking at. They're the most important, but they have not really taken that center role. They need to be able to take that center role. There has to be proper coordination with the security agents. For instance, I agree that, the police is the lead agency, but there's no need to bandy those numbers. Let's assume they have 5,000 places and you are saying you want 4. That's about 20,000 at the maximum. 20,000. So why are you talking about 35,000, 36,000 that you will not deploy? So if you have, then other agencies will bring their people. But if for Ondo, the police are taking 20,000, I'm just giving 5,000 because they have about 4,000 different areas. The polling units are just about 3,000 plus. If you put the RAGs, the local government, maybe the INEC headquarters and all of that, I'm giving them 5,000 places to go to, and you want to put 4 people. The maximum you need for deployment in Ondo State would have been 20,000. So we need to be able to get that right. Increasingly, that's what we need to do. Then there should be better synergy between the different the different security agencies, because that engagement that we had, you could see that the other security agencies were actually calling out the police. They were actually, each time they say, oh, we know that the police is the lead agency, but we see this happen, There has to be a better coordination. And then I need to strengthen whatever logistics magic that happened in Ondo. They should strengthen it and make sure that it works better. Then the young people, we need them to come out and
Young people are making, they're growing in other climes. Trump just appointed a 27-year-old lady to be press secretary of the White House.
But we need them to elect a young person.
All right, thank you very much.
Madam. In 30 seconds, your thoughts? In 30 seconds, please.
Well, my thoughts is, my prayer is that INEC will sustain this momentum, particularly against Anambra and other elections up to 2027.
All right,
okay,
thank
Nick
you very much.
Dazang,
No,
yes,
we can't take
more. Yeah,
so
Nick Dazang, former Director of Voter Education and Publicity, INEC. Thank you so much for your time. And Hamzat Lawan, Chief Executive Officer, Connected Development. We thank you for coming. And my sister, Faith Nwadishi, Executive Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So we'll take a break. When we return, our second topic will begin.